Welcome back to Out of Your League, you silly little buggers. Where have you been, Mark? What have you been doing this week? I know what you've been doing.
Yep, I did a 10k, Manchester 10k with you.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Beat you by a couple of minutes.
You did,
Whatever.
yeah.
It was a nice run, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. I hated every second of it.
I didn't like it. You were very annoying to run with. I know you only...
Well, I didn't
you ran with me for a couple of Ks and then I sped off. But you were very annoying. You made some noises.
Negative
Just
comments.
go choo-choo, like a little choo-choo train, yeah.
I didn't think I made any noise.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just let you go off. I did say to you, just leave me behind, go off.
you did. Whereas in the gym, we've trained a bit together in the gym, and you grunt and groan like to be the centre of attention.
No, I think it's just there's demons, there's things inside me trying to get out.
Like Brian Blessed having an orgasm.
So what did you 48 minutes? That's good. Is that good for an athlete? For someone who's been an athlete for 20 years?
It was okay, yeah. I didn't really do that much training, just a couple of runs.
Yeah.
But yeah, beat you. Didn't
I know, and I got 50 minutes in 13 seconds, which was annoying, wasn't it? Because I tried to get under 50, but
it's a bit embarrassing.
pathetic. And then I spent the 10 minutes looking at myself in the mirror saying I'm pathetic in the changing room.
And I was behind you going,
yeah, you are.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, you are.
Pathetic.
You're pathetic. Wish I hadn't done it. But you bought the pictures I saw as well. I
bought
noticed that you bought the pictures off the...
Because
you paid £25 for that picture.
No, it was a lot less for one. I wanted evidence that I'd done it.
Right.
And you weren't in a fit state to have a picture with, so I thought I'd buy
no. What's next? Marathon you can do?
No, I think I've...
That's it. Running days are over. Yeah. Running days are over.
Retired at the top.
Episode 8, by the way, of the new series. Do you know that? We've done 8.
Yeah.
How many with just me and you? Do you think it's going well?
I think it's getting better and better each week. Yeah.
Do you think you're
got rid of the dead wood?
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't receive
He's on another podcast now.
Yeah, we didn't receive a transfer fee for him, did we?
I wonder if people are listening to that podcast now more than ours.
Yeah. What would the transfer fee be
for him? Don't say his name. Yeah. I'd say
12 Frey Bentos pies.
No,
2 pints of Stella.
No, a bit more than that. I'd say. I'd sell him for £400.
Yeah, just as a person, like Catherine.
Yeah. We've had some great guests on this year, Mark. We've had Paul Wellens, we've had Carl Fitzpatrick, we've had Adrian Morley, just to name a few. All available, by the way, to go and watch and download on YouTube. Do you ever look back and watch back? Look at your performance, what you could have said better, questions you could have asked. You've ever thought like, I wish I'd asked
do a bit of a review.
Don't do that today, because we are joined this week by Tim Lafai, everybody, from the Salford Red Devils. Mark, your old team. What a club! What a team! Did you know, Tim, that Mark used to play for the Salford Red Devils?
I had to remind him.
Did you?
I didn't, to be honest.
Did you know who Mark was? Be honest. You didn't.
No offense, but
at least lie, Tim. You didn't.
At least lie.
Did you not play against each other in Australia when Mark was
I
at
had
West?
to remind him of that as well.
You had to remind him.
Yeah.
That must be really annoying, Mark. You have to remind Paul Vaughan that as well, didn't you?
Yeah, it happens a lot.
A player, I think, Mark, it's fair to say, he's had a pretty decent impact on Super League since he came to
I was going to say that
until
Shores. He didn't remember me. I'm just going to be quite
now don't say it. Now say like I don't think.
I think he's been shit.
Yeah, hyped, overhyped.
Overhyped.
Yeah. How are you, Tim?
Not too bad, man. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, you want to be here based in. Like, your missus isn't going to listen to this, but you've got a busy house, haven't you? You've got 4 kids.
Yeah, mate.
So this is paradise for you. Just sitting down with 2 strangers who you don't know.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a 6-hour podcast. So
walking at midnight.
You wouldn't believe it. Yeah, it's been a long day, babe. Are the kids asleep yet? Yeah, sweet.
I want to get your story because I had to do a bit of reading right back to the early days, and I'm fascinated by sort of how you've turned everything around and where you're at these days. You were born in, I'm going to try and pronounce this, Satuitua?
Sakawa.
Oh, so a T is a ka.
Yeah. Like
Sakawa.
if it's posh, like Satawa.
Okay.
If you're like talking to a politician or something, but like in general, Sakawa.
Will thinks he's posh.
For you, Satawa, mate.
You can see
Sakawa. Okay. Tell us about Sakawa. People watching who don't know what that is.
Just a small village on the other island of Samoa, so not on the main one. You got the main one where the city is of Apia. We're on another small one, up in the jungle there. So it's a very little. Tiny little village with
what are we talking population-wise?
Probably a couple of thousands.
Wow.
Yeah. The toilet's about a 50-meter walk into bush, and you got this.
The toilets are 50 meters.
This wooden hole.
For the whole.
I remember memory as a kid because I was born there. My dad walking me through the bush and just sitting on this wooden thing. Square, you get the bucket and you tip it.
But how many people have to piss in that?
The whole village.
You can't just go in the woods.
Just my family's toilet. Right. So, and the old banana leaves toilet paper.
That can't be nice on the arsehole, can it? It's scratchy.
It's organic, so I guess it's all right.
Biodegradable.
Oh, wow. Mate, but
would you use a banana leaf more than twice?
Sometimes you got to double fold
Wash
it,
it off in
otherwise
the
the fingers are going through there.
Blimey. It's like being in Salford.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
So heard.
Don't mug off Salford, Mark, because
Never.
we have a lot of people who are very touchy about that. We're not, because John used to pick on you, didn't he, about Salford?
Yeah, it's fine.
So, in all seriousness, how proud are you of your Samoan heritage when you think back to those early days as well?
Oh, very proud. It's a humbling beginning to go from that small island, just a little island kid, kicking a Coke bottle around as a rugby ball with his brother, and for my mum and dad to take us out of there to give us a better life. Took us to New Zealand first, and then that's when I found love for rugby union first, watching John Olomu and
I don't
Andrew
want to get
Mearns.
onto that yet because I'm still focused on Samoa. And your dad, Senio.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
That's got that one right.
That's the posh
I
one.
thought an N might be an S. So I don't know what's going on with that. So your dad used to, I hear, walk for miles to get food. He used to have to sometimes go fishing to bring food into the family house. I mean, that is a completely different life to what you've become used to, right?
Yeah, definitely. So there'll be days and nights where mum will look after. It was 4 of us at the time, and dad will go for a few days because he has to walk miles and miles to get us dinner through bush. He'll be sleeping like on the water at the beach somewhere just to go fishing and then come back. And that was just a normal thing back then for us kids.
That is some way to make someone humble, isn't it?
Life is it's this simplistic form. You don't really think it's not too far in the future that we live in the Western world where we've got everything we need: kitchens, cookers, whatever, supermarkets. That's life as raw as it gets, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's good life lesson, and opens your eyes up now. You yourself being a father. For my kids and what I can tell them and show them how great they got it.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to paint the picture for everyone listening as well. You lived in a house which was essentially wooden posts with a tin roof, and there was this one moment, wasn't there, where a cyclone came through the village and came through the island.
Yeah.
And your auntie had bought you a little toy aeroplane.
Yeah,
Just tell that story for us.
Yeah, that memory, for some reason, I don't remember a lot of things, but that one sticks with me. It was just, pretty much like what you said, the 4 pillars just holding, a roof up, and a cyclone hit our village, and you can see the water rising up, and everything's just getting blown and absolutely demolished. And I remember as a kid, just sitting there and just seeing my toy aeroplane that was bought for me, and just seeing it being washed away, and I was just, it's just something that's sat with me for my entire life.
Do you miss those days though in some way, even though obviously life is very different now? Do you miss that sort of far more simple way of living?
Definitely. I've gone back to Samoa a few times, and just seeing how happy those our people are, and how simple they're living life in this complicated world. It's a part of me does miss it, and a part of me wants to take my kids and wife back there just to show them, where their dad kind of grew up.
And you, when you were telling that aeroplane story, I mean, you were a toddler then, weren't you? Sort of like 4 or 5 years old before you guys moved to New Zealand. Was it a thing in mum and dad's eyes to move away to help better the family, to give you more opportunity in life?
Yeah, it was, because we had my uncles living in New Zealand, and mum and dad could see that we weren't going to get a better life if we stayed where we were, and thankfully enough they made that choice and decision to take us overseas to New Zealand, and for them to start working a job that can provide for us and give us that better life.
And you didn't speak a word of English, right, at this point? I mean, I know you're only 4 or 5 years old, but you grew up speaking Samoan.
Yeah, it's funny that, because I couldn't speak English, and then going to school it was a bit hard for myself and my siblings. It was you got all these kids, these kids talking to me, and I'm just like nodding my head and speaking Samoan back to them, and it was just, it was a good learning curve for me, because it was where I started learning English. Until this day, I still can't speak English. My wife has to correct me on some sentences, mate.
You're better English than Mark already now.
Better than me.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of Samoans moved to Auckland and other parts of New Zealand, but Christchurch is still quite separate in terms of immigration from the island. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. It's for some reason, a lot of the islanders go from, say, Samoa, Tonga, they go to Auckland or Wellington, And for myself, it was Christchurch because that's where Mum's dad was, our grandpa, and so she wanted us there, and there was a better opportunity for Mum and Dad to get work there, and for us to be around, her dad.
Yeah, a bit of family.
Yeah, a bit of family, just to help around there. So, I was a Christchurch boy.
Do you remember that setting you back, though, not being able to speak the language? Do you remember not being able to sort of make friends and to interact at school and sitting in a class and not understanding what the hell's going on?
Yeah, there was days where I would just be playing by myself in the playground, or I would just be like, I want to go back to the islands because I'm not fitting in here, or it's just hard to kind of adapt.
Did you feel lonely then? You felt like a bit of a recluse in that sense. I mean, what was the moment where you felt included at that age?
I think it was rugby for me.
Yeah.
Because obviously English was foreign to us, so I guess it was when it comes to sports or something, rugby was something that was big there, and luckily enough I was good at it as a kid when I started running around in that, and then that's when I started making friends, and that's probably the turning point of me wanting to stay there.
There was a point, wasn't there, where your mum and dad saved up to buy you a rugby ball? You and your brother, is it Caleb, your brother?
Yeah, Caleb. Yeah, because at that time we were just kicking around a Coke bottle over the parallel lines, and so we're just using, whenever we had like an empty Coke bottle or milk bottle, we'll just be kicking that around, and Mum and Dad had to save up until Christmas, and then we got
a good
this.
advert for Coke, that, isn't it, Mark? Tap into that.
Drink it, or you can play rugby with it.
Exactly.
Made dreams come true. A flat Coke bottle. But like that, take us back to that moment then with your brother, because they're such organic moments, something natural moments. Like you get your hands on that ball, and you kind of almost that was the beginning of everything, right? What we see today.
Yeah, it was. Once it probably was the cheapest rugby ball Mum and Dad could find, but to us it was like the best thing ever, because it just opened up so many doors for me and him to find extra love for the game, and we were just outside until the sun went down, kicking that ball around, and it was the best feeling.
You mentioned Jonah Lomu there. I mean, Mark, you remember Jonah Lomu as a guy. I used to love watching that guy. That 95 World Cup.
He was the guy that put rugby on the map in terms of a world sport. He was so dynamic as a player and as a personality, just broke boundaries, and was such an ambassador for the game. He was amazing.
I think Mike Catt's still picking himself out of the grass at Twickenham. Remember, he got absolutely stomped.
He scored 5 tries that game, didn't he?
He was unbelievable.
Because he's Samoan descent, isn't he?
I think he's Tongan.
Is he Tongan?
Yeah. But as a kid, I just seen him as this figure of like, well, I want to be like him. I want to play on the big stage, and
But were you in the stadium when he came to play against the Crusaders?
Yeah, so Crusaders was my favourite team, and my uncle and dad took me and my brother to a game, and so that's when Crusaders had Justin Marshall, Andrew Mertens, and they were versing, I think it was Waikato. That's who Jonah Lomu was versing. Yeah, Chiefs. And there was this small Samoan winger for Crusaders, and then I looked, opposite of him, and there was this big Tongan, I was like, who's that? And he had the fringe just dangling.
Yeah. That must have been 95 then, how did the World Cup?
Yeah. And I was just in awe as a kid. You look at that and like, wow, I want to be like that.
Yeah. They are important moments, only that you remember, that you just, that probably lit a flame in your head, right?
I think definitely, because like I said, it's something that's stuck in my head, for all these years, and it's what probably inspired me to start playing rugby and just try to be like him.
And he broke the mould. Wingers didn't look like Jonah Lomu back then, did they?
Yeah, that's the thing.
They were small and fast. They weren't like as big as a flanker in Union, but then fast as anybody on the field. He completely broke the mould, and probably was a trailblazer for a lot of the wingers we see today. Leslie Van Cole, Ryan Hall. You can go through hundreds of them.
So sad. 40 years old.
Yeah, incredible.
Was his same age as me. Gone.
Was a kidney? Was it a kidney?
Yeah, kidney failure. Yeah, horrendous.
Man.
So at this stage, were you playing? Cause you're 31 now, so I'm thinking I'm 9 years older than you. You would have been, you'd have been young still, wouldn't you? Like 6, 7 years old. Were you playing Union at that stage in New Zealand?
Yeah, so we were playing for a club called Merlin's in our hometown there, and rugby was obviously the sport, and they didn't have my age group, so I had to kind of play 2 years older with my older brother, and it was just the best thing ever. I knew I was right where I was meant to be, and running around with my brother next to me was a pretty awesome feeling as a kid, and it was then where I knew what I wanted to be.
So you were always, there's a theme here as well, you were always playing with the bigger boys, right? You were the kind of quick, talented younger guy that everyone thought had a bit about him.
Yeah, I knew nothing about age groups. All I seen was just like bodies, and just wanted to play with my older brother and running around, on that paddock. So yeah.
At this point, right, you're on the move again. So you've gone from Samoa to Christchurch, and you sort of settled there, and you've made friends, and you've made schoolmates, and you're starting to play rugby and so on. And then you're off to Sydney in 1999.
Yeah.
Did you want to be moving around as much of this, and why off again on the travels?
Nah, definitely. I think that was probably one of the hardest moves, because by then I've already established a good community and good group of friends. I could finally fit in and speak English a bit, and I was loving my rugby there. So. Dad's brother, so my 10th uncle, he's...
How many uncles have you got? Tim, how many uncles have you got? You've got any uncles in Salford?
There could be.
Might be now, yeah.
If he's Islander, he could be my uncle. So he's popped up an opportunity for Dad to come over and work with him. And he's sold this dream to Dad that there's a better lifestyle in Australia,
Sydney.
Yeah, in Western Sydney, mate, for him and his family. So Mum and Dad's just going, yep, screw your childhood, don't worry about your friends you've made. We're moving to Australia in Sydney. So and it's a funny story, because he showed us a pamphlet, and it was the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. And like, as a kid who was 8 or 9, I'm looking in these weird, triangular shapes. I'm like, are we actually going to live inside there? Like, I can't believe
a spaceship.
I can't believe we're living.
Just get on the plane.
This is the future.
This is so different from the banana shack that we were in 5 years ago. That
we're going to these triangular shaped houses, but it's the Opera House. Little do I know, it's just
all your friends. Look where I'm going to live.
And then we landed, and I'm waking up, and we're driving. I'm just waking up. And we're driving through this housing commission area. I'm a housing commission kid, so and just I'm looking at it, this is not the place he showed us.
So disappointed.
Dad, you're full of shit.
There's no water here. there's no beaches here.
This is shit up.
So yeah, I was a bit disappointed as a kid.
Have you forgiven him?
I've finally forgiven him.
That's amazing.
Which uncle then was responsible for the sort of the change of gear in looking at rugby league?
It was Dad's friends, because when we moved to Australia, I was obviously still looking for a union club, and in Australia at that time, union wasn't as big, and to travel to the games, it was always 40 to an hour minute drive, and rugby league was always 10, 15 minutes. There was a club everywhere. And so I was playing rugby union, and then his friend said, you should try give your son a run at rugby league. It's pretty similar.
And it's closer.
Yeah, and it's closer.
You don't have to drive as much.
Drive an hour or 15 minutes. Dad waited up.
Were they thinking sort of technically as well, that were they looking that analytically as you as a player, or they just thought, why not give it a go? Did they think that you can actually make it more as a league player than a union?
I think they were just it's more for my dad to stop driving an hour.
Oh, right.
It wasn't about me. It was about saving petrol. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was and probably for making more for me to make more friends, because my friends were playing league. Anyways, I went and had my first crack at rugby league, and I fell to the floor, and I placed the ball back, and everyone's looking at me like, get up. And I was like, what? It's like, no, you got to get up and play with your foot. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's not like rugby union. So anyway,
you got a bit there from there, I reckon.
Yeah, so I learned from there that you got to, it's quite different to rugby union.
And you had an interesting crew of lads that you used to play with in your local area, Minto. So who was on the list? Was it Israel Folau?
Yeah, so I actually didn't play for Minto Cobras because, again, they didn't have my age group.
Yeah.
But I was, my brother was playing there, and I would go and, train with him and that. But you had, in that same housing commission area, everyone would always play touch footy, which is, touch rugby, on a paddock right in front of Izzy Folau's house. And you had the Paya brothers, McGuinness, the Guinness brothers, Folau, Kristen Inu, Jared Haynes. Wow. We all grew up in that same housing commission area.
That's a crew, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And as I remember, because I was a kid playing, I was like, wow, look. And I think they were playing SG Ball, something which is under 18s, so they weren't cracking it yet. But I was just thinking, man, look at these guys playing for like, you know, Roosters and all those NRL clubs that I watch on TV. I was inspired again.
Is that where the dream started, where you thought, actually, do you know what, I want to play NRL?
Yeah, definitely. You know, and when Hainsey, Inu, Folau and that started making their debuts, the Payer brothers, I was just like in awe. Like, you know, here kids from the same block as me, you know, started from nothing, and you know, they just shows, you know, if you believe in it, you know, you can just do it.
It makes it tangible. I think it's like, if you see people that are from your area reach those heights, it makes it believable for you, doesn't it? And kind of makes you think that you can do it as well. It's really important. And
100%. Yeah.
So then take us from playing outside Israel Folau's garden, outside his front room, to then Canterbury looking at you and having a sniff and coming through the ranks there.
Yeah, because I was always just going, you know, playing touch footy with those lads there, and then. So I played SU ball too at Rabbitohs, but then nothing come off it. And I was still in high school. And then once I finished high school, they didn't want to re-sign me. I went and played park rugby just, you know, for my local at Campbelltown, East Campbelltown, playing Ron Massey. So it's like not reserves. He's probably just under that. And you know, I was just 18 then, and we were versing like men. We were the team that everyone looks forward to versing to get their. If they were struggling to get their form back, we were that team that you could put 50 on. So I was just playing just to play with my mates again and working at the same time. And then that's when the Bulldogs recruit, Pete Mulholland, come in and said, hey mate, you know, we're struggling in the centres in our under-20s for Bulldogs. How would you like to you know, come have a run with us? And I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome, man. Like, yeah, for sure. In my head, I'm thinking I'm just going forward training, you know, trained that week, and then the coach was like, Andy Patmore, he was saying, we're going to need you to play this week. So that week I went into training, didn't know anyone's name, didn't know any of the plays. I made debut in the under-20s, and then the following year I was under-20s again, and then made my debut for Bulldogs because Josh Morris got injured. And then,
sliding doors moments, aren't they? It's amazing just being sort of not right place, right time. You obviously had the skills and things about you, but who believed in you then? Who are the people that you look back and think, they were the ones who pushed me in that direction? Were mum and dad thinking that this kid can do it? Yeah,
look, not many people believed in me because, you know, usually if you're going to crack it in that first grade spot, you want to get signed after SU ball. And I didn't. I had
you were old in that sense, weren't you?
Which is under 18s. So I kind of had to go back and play park footy. And for me, I was just thinking, just, you know, stick with it, you know, believe in myself and the process. And I had to work because I finished high school too. So there wasn't many people believed in me other than my mum, dad, and my brother and my sisters. And you know, I thank them for sticking by me.
What's that moment like when you pull on that Bulldogs top and walk out in the stadium as an NRL player, having sort of achieved that dream? You know, going from Israel Folau and your boys in the backyard.
Yeah, it was surreal. It was like I couldn't believe it, running out of, because it was at ANZ Stadium too. Wow. So it's a stadium that I've always watched Origin, you know, NRL Grand Finals. I've always just as a kid being like, I would love just to play on there one day, and to be able to, you know, put that jersey on and make my debut on there. And it was against Rabbitohs, who had my favourite player, Greg Inglis. So, you know,
we've had Greg on, Mark, haven't we? He's been on the podcast, Greg.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Well, was he on here when he was at Warrington?
Do you know what, we had him on during lockdown? We did him on Zoom, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
a long time ago, 3-4 years ago.
About that.
Yeah,
all the big names.
All the big names.
You,
Lafai. So, I mean, when you think of that time, then in Australia, 170, I think you made appearances, didn't you, in the NRL for St George as well? And a spell back at Canterbury. What are your memories? What's your lasting memories now when you look back a few years on?
Memories now is, obviously my debut and scoring on debut, playing in the GF there, the Anzac tests, the Anzac match, Dragons, between the Dragons and Roosters. Mm-hmm. That's pretty massive back home. You know, it was like always 50,000, you know, at the stadium there. And that was another one that stuck with me, because you have the whole aeroplanes and, you know, the soldiers, you know, and it's for a great occasion. So that's something that stuck with me too.
And obviously played in the grand final that you mentioned, but 2014 against three of the Burgesses. When Sam's jaw was hanging off and Jammer was there as well. What a match that was,
mate. That was it's a memory that will still last forever with me. Would have been better if we won, but you can't win them all. But I remember Sammy, mate, you English blokes, I'll give it to you, you're tough.
Yeah, we are.
You breed them tough.
Me and Sam are really tough.
You don't remember playing against Mark? Was that about 2011, Mark?
He was looking at my shoulder before and thought, I remember
he's
copying one of them.
Yeah, he's probably still got a bit of Sam's jaw on him somewhere. Were you close to that incident? I was trying to think where you were on the pitch at that point.
I actually was.
Were you playing right centre or left?
Right centre.
Right, so
because that's where he did the kick return.
Can you believe
he was running off. Oh, please don't run this way. Don't run in. You see him and Jammer just first one's out. And mate,
two big heads as well.
Mate,
two big cow heads.
Yeah.
Could you believe he kept playing? Because
I couldn't believe it. I didn't know he did it.
With
that's the thing. I didn't know he broke something on his face, and until I didn't even know after the game, until a week later in the papers, and I'm thinking this bloke play with a broken eye socket or jaw, and mate, did he get the?
He got Dalium,
yeah. He got the man of the match for that. Yeah.
Ironically, the next scrum after it happened, Jammer said, "Sam, your face looks like a drop pie."
That sounds like Jammer. Yeah, that's definitely a Jammer moment.
Now you've had an experience, and we'll get on to Salford days in a minute, but now you've sort of dipped your toe in Super League. What are the main differences? I ask everyone who comes on this podcast, and we always kind of get different answers. A lot of people say when they come here, the crowds, the atmospheres are far more ferocious, even though they're not as big in number. But when you look back to those days, was the NRL everything it was hyped up to be for you?
Yeah, NRL was definitely what I dreamed it to be. The crowd and the atmosphere, the players. And it was just it was unforgettable career that I had there. It's something I always remember and cherish, and the friendships you make. I still talk to a few of the boys from there.
But the microscope is on you, right? It's
far more
intense.
People
definitely.
Are in your business. Yeah. I've had a few tough runs. A few tough years over there because you're just under the microscope and in the spotlight. The whole time. So. It's a bit like footballers over here,
So it's more ruthless. Do you feel sort of let down by clubs in the sense that you can just be sort of treated a bit like a bit of meat and dropped, and there's no sort of aftercare package of when you're injured, for example?
At that time, I didn't think much of it as a young kid, but towards the last few years of my NRL career, I didn't really enjoy it.
Why was that?
Just because of that reason. I started realising that we are it's a business, and we're just assets, and like what you said, like a piece of meat for them. Once you start getting to that age bracket and the form isn't too well, then they can quickly forget what you've done for them. So
loads of people have said that, Mark, haven't they? That have been on. Did you feel that at all? I know you weren't there long, but
I found it towards the back end of my career that we're just an asset and we're easily expendable, and if you're not playing well, it doesn't really matter. And as I got older, I was more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But as a younger player, you think they care more about you, and I think it's quite naive, and probably the young man in me just thinks that they love me as much as I love them, and there's a bit of a relationship between the club, but it's very transactional. It's all about performance and money and winning and losing. And
well, Brodie Croft said it, didn't he, when he was at the Broncos? And obviously that was a big move, and he was kind of, 1 minute you're built up and you're the star and you're on the front page and the back page and everything, and then you might be on the front of the back page for the wrong reasons, and they'll dig away at that. Do you think that's less so over here then when you you can
I think it's the same in all sports, in all countries, and all size of club and profile. I think it's just the fact that it's more magnified over there, and it's probably played out in the public more than over here, but you're easily expendable in the NRL as you are in Super League, and I think unfortunately the sooner that young players realise that, the better and the more equipped they will be to react to it.
Yeah. I know you've talked about this a lot before, Tim, and tell me if you don't want to, but you've struggled and you've come through the other side of mental health issues. Lockdown was difficult for many people in many different ways, wasn't it? But why was it so hard for you, do you think?
I think for me, because I knew that was the last year of my contract, and going into lockdown, not being able to play, we need to be on the field to be able to show clubs what we have. Like that's where we get our contracts from, being on the field. So that kind of pressure, providing for your family, kind of creeps in and starts to get at you in your head, and then you start just going into this whole downward spiral in your head. Yeah.
Do you bottle things up, or do you talk about your feelings?
That's the thing with me back then. I bottle things up. I've been taught as in my culture, or as a kid, I've never been shown that side to be able to open up to my dad. So a lot of things I hold in until it's like a steaming teapot. You hold it in for so long, and then when it comes out, it just comes out raging. And that was me.
You say in your background, in your upbringing, you mean sort of is that a Samoan thing? Is that an Islander thing?
Yeah, I think
that you kind of there are bigger problems. We've got to eat. We've got to survive.
Yeah, could be an island. I definitely think it's an Islander thing. We've never been shown a side of affection from our dads, or parents. And that's nothing against them. It's just how they were probably brought up to. Very rarely we would hear "I love you," or if we felt like we were having issues at school or having an off game, it would be like, "Oh, that's right." It was never like that. It would be like, "Oh, not good enough." It would always be like, "Not good enough. What are you playing for?" So you take that in as a kid, and then when you get tested, in your career, you kind of have that in the back of your head, so you don't want to bring things out.
Did you not feel loved as a kid, even though they provided for you?
I definitely felt love, but it was never verbal. Do you know what I mean? It was never like from that. I learned from that experience as a parent. Now, I do the complete opposite. If my son needs a cry or he's having off day or off game, I just pat him on the back like, "It's all right, buddy." And I never got that from my dad. It was always just tough love, I guess.
It's an interesting one because even you, Mark, with with your parents, and certainly with mine, and a lot of them were born in that post-war generation where it was kind of just stiff upper lip, get on with things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we had the same struggles, or certainly I didn't in terms of survival or whatever, but it was more affection was shown in actions, right, rather than sitting down, and that's maybe where the world has changed. Because particularly during lockdown, I remember there was this whole conversation about a generation of people who couldn't just sit down and shut the fuck up for 3 months and be paid on what's called furlough and stuff like that. We made this big issue, didn't we, about look at us, poor old us. Like we're literally having to stay at home and watch Netflix. It's quite easy. There's two ways of looking at it, aren't there? Yeah,
that's summarising it, but they're not looking at the intricacies of people's struggles and what people rely on, which is being social, having employment and have a future and stability, providing for the family. And there's so many things that go on in people's lives that, just to summarise, as staying at home and getting paid is a bit ridiculous for me. But just touching on what Tim said, I think those formative early years can mould you as a person. And if I'm sure you would have had loads of love in your family, but probably not that obvious. And I think there's a thing about probably some cultures where they don't verbalise that love, but also with masculinity, you're kind of taught not to share your feelings and just to suck it up and get on with it, and not to show weakness. But it's okay to show weakness at times, and it's okay to ask for help or discuss your feelings. And I think I've been a person in the past that's probably bottled things up and just tried to get on with it, but I don't think that ends up in the most positive outcome, really.
No, and that's not me belittling. The lockdown situation, I think it magnified and it sort of put mental health more on the map. And it needed to be that, right? Because people were in situations where, particularly if you didn't have a family life and people around you, people you didn't realise they were lonely, for example. What kind of emotions were? And I know that the main thing you said there was that the fact that you couldn't provide for your kids, right? This time you got 4 young kids and your wife Jackie, and you were unsure about the future. Obviously, you didn't know when NRL was going to restart. You had the contract thing up in the air as well. Just try and sort of sum up that moment for us emotionally.
It's stressful, and I got kind of the hint that the club wasn't going to re-sign me at Dragons at that time, so it was quite stressful. And when it happened, when my mental break happened, it was I took it out on my wife and the house. I don't know if you read the article, but
yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. And obviously, we don't want to pry, but as we're here and it's all on the table and it's out there anyway. But so there was a situation on the Good Friday in 2020.
Yeah.
You ended up being arrested, right?
Yeah. They had to sedate me from what I remember, because it was just over a little something that could have been solved again by me just opening up and talking to my wife, but because I had so much bottled up in me, she says something and I just snapped, and before you know it, furniture's flying across the house, and I'm not thinking at that time. At that time, I'm just like blacked out, and then I've gone and just grabbed straight bottles, walked downstairs and just started drinking it, sculling it, and then just started smashing the walls down there, grabbing a sledgehammer, walking around the backyard. And then I think it was the neighbours that called the cops, because he seen me and he heard a lot of it. And then she's called one of our good neighbours, Junior Moan. He's at Dragons. He was only young. He was only, because I was training with him. He was only just finished SU ball, and he would come over and we would train together. So she's called, apparently, I don't remember this, but she's called him to come and try to calm me down, and he wasn't getting through to me. And then she's called her brother and my brother and her sister to come, Sammy Parrott, and I didn't remember any of these people coming over by then. Nothing's gotten through to me, and they've taken the kids to a whole different room, and then that's when the cops were there, and then the ambulance came in and just sedated me, and then I just woke up in the hospital.
But there must be millions of people, particularly men in the world, that have felt like doing that and have felt like exploding and breaking out or whatever, and it's maybe something that they've never done, but that they've been on the verge of doing. Did you sort of feel that week building to that moment?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been building up, and unfortunately, my wife and kids were the one that copped it. Lucky I didn't physically touch them, but it was it's not something nice that sits with me, especially knowing that my kids were there. Watching.
Is that the biggest thing, that they saw that? And
you
have to kind of somehow explain it to them?
And trying to explain that to them is something that I always beat myself up on, and I'll learn from. Moving forward as a dad is not the example I want to set for my boy, let alone my girls. It was definitely tough.
I really appreciate you being this open with this, but how do you go about explaining something like that to your kids? Because you want to, don't you? And you want them to know that that's not dad. Like that's something that you've gone on to address, right?
Yeah. It's it's something that luckily they haven't brought up. I know my oldest daughter probably remembers. I'm not sure about my son, but it's a good teaching lesson for myself, so I can teach him that it's okay to open up to me with any struggles in life, whether it's small or big, and it's okay to be vulnerable, because I guess the positive out of that is I can now teach him a better life lesson.
Well, what was it like the next day? I assume you woke up in a cell the next day.
No, I woke up in a hospital, so I was strapped to a hospital bed. I was knocked out for whatever they sedated me with. I woke up in a hospital bed and I had these handcuffs on the bed, and I was like...
that must have been a shock.
Yeah, I was confused. I was like, what the heck? What happened? Like, last thing I remember was just throwing like a chair across the lounge room, going downstairs and drinking some hard liquor, and then that's all I remembered was that. And then waking up here, I was just like kind of panicked. I was like, what's going on here? And then I was still drowsy. And then the police were there, and the nurse who was looking after me, he's like, oh, just calm down. You've had a mental breakdown, and we've sedated you with some heavy stuff. Just calm down. And I'm just like trying to ask him, where's my wife and kids? Are they okay? And it was quite confusing.
How do you try and understand that? I mean, what essentially is a mental breakdown? How did they explain it to you, of how you then try and cope with that going forward?
They didn't, at that time, they didn't give me any full details of, what I've done or what's happened. They were just kind of more worried about me and trying to, making sure I don't, go on another rage. So it wasn't until they put me in a psych ward. I was in there for, I think, a week. then they explain slowly each stage of what happened.
I mean, that's a big thing to take, isn't it? Especially when you're a family man and, and you're thinking about your kids and you're thinking about your wife and obviously your future with them, which is great that you've now got this future with them. But trying to understand what's going on in your own head in that, essentially, was it the alcohol? Was it the chemical imbalance? Was it a combination? And it's something that you've had to learn to sort of address and to... it's not something that ever goes, right? You have to maintain that the whole time.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, definitely. It's something that, it's taught me that there's another way. Because as a kid, I've always seen my dad go on his raging fits. So I guess, that's where I've kind of got it from when I see him rage out. And
you're a product of your environment, right?
Exactly.
In so many ways.
And that's where it's from, I guess.
And how have your behaviours changed since that episode in terms of offloading your feelings, all that kind of stuff? Have you changed your behaviour since?
Oh, it's definitely a lot better than from then. No, I still don't have it perfect. I still struggle sometimes to offload to my wife. She's usually who I offload to. But it's a lot better, in terms of not going straight to anger, what I mean, or bottling it up. So yeah, it's definitely a lot better than before.
It is fascinating, isn't it? And mental health is a topic that comes up on this podcast so often as well. And particularly within sport, because that's where it comes out, right?
Yeah.
And competition, and like you said, talking about pride and ego and not being able to provide and all this sort of stuff. Why do men not open up? I mean, because you've become a bit of a sort of trailblazer for mental health, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great question, mate. It's I wish I knew the answer because I'll be out there fixing it. It's quite common in professional athletes how much we bottle things up and we feel like there's this stigma around us that we got to be macho. We got to put on this front. Because people are looking at us. So it's definitely something that I would love the Super League and NRL to work on at each club because it's very important.
I think you touched on it. You said pride and ego, and I think that's essentially it. Men are too, especially in the dressing room as well, men are too proud to show any weakness, to show that they're vulnerable, but it takes enormous courage to tell the story that Tim did just now. But the more people that do, the more people will listen, and the more people they'll seek that help, and they'll learn to kind of manage their feelings better, because it's about talking about your feelings and showing vulnerability, because people get in a dark place and bad things can happen when that occurs. So the more people that discuss how they're doing, the better for me. No,
and it's amazing it didn't get as dark as it could do. We've had Callum Watkins on this podcast. So I assume you've had some good chats with Callum.
Yeah.
And I've read when I was reading your story, Tim, that you said I started to doubt if I should be on this earth. It can't get more rock bottom than that, can it?
No, it surely can't, and I'm glad because I think it was that time when the ambulance came. Because my wife was saying, because we have a balcony, and I was just that's when I was saying I was just standing there, and then luckily in time the police and the ambulance got there in time to sedate me, because that's pretty rock bottom for me there.
How important then is it that your performances are up there, and how relatable is it to what's going on the pitch? Because Callum's had a complete turnaround, hasn't he, in his career? He's been playing. He sort of had that period, didn't he, Mark, years ago, where he was right at the top, and obviously inevitably, like anyone, has a dip and a lull, and it's been able to get over that. But it seems that if things are great on the pitch, things are kind of good at home, right?
Yeah, well, just to butt in there, it coincided with Callum's dark times, or his performances on the field, and his injury. So I think it's important for fans to realise that if players aren't playing well, or they're injured, or that kind of someone's getting the better of them and they're not getting the best out of themselves and they're losing every week. That's the lengths he can go to with Callum, who openly admitted he would plan his suicide after a bad performance. So the two would coincide so much if you're proud of what you do as a job and as a rugby player.
Yeah, fans don't think that, do they? And should we expect them to think that? Maybe we should, but particularly with Premier League football here, we just sort of treat them as, again, slabs of meat. Sort of like, oh, you know, any kind of mistake on the pitch, that they're slammed or whatever. No one thinks that these guys could be going through what you're going through, Tim, at home. They could be had these issues that have never come to light. You've been very brave enough to speak about what's happened. You could have kept that all under the carpet. And you know, do you see it as the fact that you can help other people who are thinking like this?
Yeah, definitely, because like what you said, fans only see what they see, you know, on the rugby pitch. You know, whether a player has a bad game, that's all they see, but they don't know what's caused that player to lead into, you know, a bad game. There could be stuff happening off the field. You know, he could be carrying like a niggling injury. There's so much to it that fans don't know, and I think it's important, you know, that they know we don't go out there we don't just wake up on game day and be like, oh, I feel like playing shit today. Like, you know, that's never in our mind. You know, to go out there and perform bad for them, you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into a player's prep, I guess, each week.
Do you feel in a good place now?
Definitely. I'm at the stage now where I finally matured after 30 years.
Do we ever finally mature as humans?
No, we don't.
Get more immature.
Okay, but I'm like Benjamin Button when it comes to maturity.
Yeah. I still think I'm 21 sometimes, but yeah, now I'm just in my head, my mindset is there's more to life than rugby, and that's something my brother's always told me. He's been a great mentor for me. Throughout my career, he's always told me, look, rugby doesn't run your life. There's more to life than rugby, and that's very true. Because when I had a year off to work in construction, mate, those blokes don't even care about rugby. Like, there's blokes in there who care about their construction business and getting buildings. You know, you walk past them, they don't even know who you are,
and they're happy, right?
And they're happy with life, and it just shows. It was a good reality check that. Rugby doesn't run your life. There's other things going on that people care about. So we need to stop thinking that people care about us, people who don't even matter. So now, if I have a bad game or if we lose, the first thing I think is just my kids and wife. You know, kids are the best things ever. Like, they don't judge you for how you played, or, you know, they're just happy that dad's all right and dad's home. Hey, mate, like, you know yourself. Like, they see you walk in that door. You know, they don't know how bad you played, or if you lost, or if you had a great game, they'll treat you the same, and that's a great reality check for me.
The Mark's kids do. I tell them how bad it was. Particularly towards the end. They only saw the sort of dark Salford days at the very end when, in fact, they were very good days, weren't they?
We've got to
a grand final into a Challenge Cup final. So
that's really good.
You see a psychologist, right? Have you seen therapists as well? I mean, and I know you've talked about how important the role of a psychologist has been. Is that a sports psychologist? Is it?
Yeah, so it was. So when I went to so it was a private hospital mental facility. It was catered for professional sporting athletes, army, reserve, police, firemen. So it was really good facility that they had there. So we got that through our private health insurance back when, because everyone has to have it when they're in NRL. So that was awesome. My experience there, like talking to other policemen, and they were in there too for post-traumatic stuff. And then it was a great eye opener. And the tools they gave me, I still use it, till now. And yeah, up until that whole year, I was seeing the sports side.
How important? I know, Mark, we talked about this loads as well. Sports psychologist, and Dr. Steve Peters, when he came in to work with Liverpool, Chimp Paradox, he worked with British cycling team. The amount of people that you think haven't even necessarily struggled with what you've been through, Tim, but just in terms of enhancing performance, Sir Chris Hoy talks about it with Steve Peters and so on. But particularly with what you've been through, being able to offload to someone who's not going to judge you and actually just listens is crucial, right? In terms of what you've done over the last few years and how you've turned things around. Yeah,
I think it's. It worked well for me because it was a stranger. At first it was tough, like, I'll be honest, because he's a stranger, and I was just sitting there, like, my first session, and I was just like...
Did you hold back? You didn't want to...
Yeah, I was holding a lot back, and I didn't know how to start off, like, and he was just like, mate, just tell me about your day, tell me what you've eaten today, and just started with small talk, and then before you know it, I'm finding myself just like offloading my day and what I do in training and that to him, and then it's showing me to be open and vulnerable, and it was the best thing ever for me.
Isn't it fascinating though? And I assume they went back to sort of your childhood, and I'm not saying they were childhood traumas or whatever, but things that you perhaps never unloaded as a kid, and that can sort of build up to why you've reacted like you have as an adult.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of things I told him was to do with my childhood and what I seen as a kid, and then he started going deep into it and kind of picking up things as to why it's built me to who I am now, and it started to make sense. And it's just crazy, mate.
Well, let's focus on what's happened over the last 2 years, though, because it's amazing, really, that you've got from that position, rock bottom as you described it. You're at this stage. Take us to the construction site, because you're 29 years old. You're still in Australia. Salford hadn't come calling yet. You're working on a building site. You're doing some labouring, and you were just thinking, I'm done with rugby, right?
Yeah. Well, so that year I got released to go to Bulldogs, because I thought, that's where I started my career. They'll give me a lifeline, for the following years. So I went to Bulldogs to finish off that year, and then there was about 8 to 10 blokes who got told that they're not going to re-sign because it was Trent Barrett who was coming in to take over the club, and he didn't want. Obviously, like I said, you're getting old. You're just a mate again, and it wasn't what he wanted from the club, and so being told that if you come over, we'll re-sign you. Going from that to being told, no, we don't need you anymore, and then it was the last month of my pay, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I need to find a way to provide for my wife and kids here. It's going to become a reality. I'm not getting paid after that. So,
was there any interest from other clubs?
There was, but it was for training trial. Right. So it was like, to go from being paid pretty well and being a top 25 player, and for what I've done for the game, the eight years I was there, to go from that to being offered just a training trial was kind of a slap in the face. I thought at least deserve like minimum. So it was. I was like, no, I can't afford to take a train on trial. Especially with kids, I've got to put food on the table for them. So
expensive kids as well.
Kids are expensive.
You got 8 between the two of you.
It's not like with the olden days, right?
Yeah. But as you've just explained there, everything happens for a reason, right? I know that's a really cheesy way of looking at things, but that building site taught you probably invaluable lessons.
Yeah, 100%. So I had nothing come up, and then my mate, who's actually over here at Hull FC, Joey Lovadua, he was the same. He didn't get, a lot of players were off contract. He didn't get signed, and he was working construction, bit of labouring and traffic control. And he called me up. He goes, "Hey Laf, what are you up to?" I was like, "Nah, nothing, man. Just
you said up to Zeus.
Up to also, like nothing, brother. Just chilling at home, lad." And then he was like, "Do you need a job or anything?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll take anything, man." They're like, "Oh, go do this, get your tickets to work on a construction site." My boss said he'll be happy to take you on. And then went and worked with him, doing traffic control, a bit of labouring. So
talk us through traffic control. Do you stand there with the stop door?
It was a great wake-up call. Just literally, it was, so we were waving in like trucks because we were on big building sites that the whatever companies were building, and we were just waving, say, cement trucks, carrying in steel for steel fixing. So we'll be standing on the side there with our walkie-talkies, and then one will radio in, truck coming in, left, and then I'll walk on, wave the lollipop up. I remember one bloke going past, "That looks like Tim Lafai." I'm like, I put my hard hat down, and I'm like, "Come on, mate, keep moving."
Have a whistle as well?
For attention.
Just a high-vis singlet.
And I get it, because you said you learnt so much. It's all I can see the sort of film being made here of like you learnt kind of that you didn't need to play in front of 80,000 people. But was there a point before you learnt those lessons where you thought, I've played in these stadiums and I've been Tim Lafai in the NRL, and here I am turning a traffic sign around? Did that ego take a massive knock when you had to do that?
Yeah, definitely. It was a big ego check for me, because I was thinking, mate, I've played this many NRL games. I've played for these clubs. Like, what am I doing here?
And still in good nick, I'm saying.
Yeah.
Still play.
Yeah, I still had to, because shifts will start at 6:30 in the morning. So to get in, and it would be like 10 to 12 hour shifts. So the only time I could get my training in was like 4 in the morning. I'd go to a 24/7 gym and do our training there, and then go to work from there. So that was 6 days a week I was doing that.
And do you do that to keep the dream alive? Do you think I need to keep training because an opportunity might arise in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Part of me, at first, the first probably 2-3 months, I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. Getting paid weekly. There's no pressure of rugby anymore. But then after that, it started to hit me. I'm starting to miss being around that environment. I'm starting to think, man, because a lot of people were coming up to me like, oh, what are you doing here? Like, you're only 29 and you're already ready to throw it all away. And it kind of just stuck with me. That was my boss. It kind of just stuck with me. When people would say that, and then I used that to, try to keep that dream alive. And I started thinking of my kids again. What kind of legacy do I want to leave them? Showing that I gave up on my dream. It's not something I want to leave them with. Their dad giving up on their dream, and here I am telling them, don't give up on your dream. And I'm throwing it away. So all those little things, I kept in the back of my head, and that's what kept me going.
I love that. It's beautiful. So how did the Salford move come about from the construction site? Because that has given you a whole new lease of life, right?
Yeah. So it's we're like 10 months down of working on the construction site, and still keeping that dream alive and training.
Were you playing anything at this point?
So throughout the year, early in the year, I was part-time with Parramatta.
Right.
So I would go to work, and then I would ask the supervisor if I can leave early so I can go do my part-time training, and just trying to balance that kind of work with.
Was that Wentworth, Phil?
Yeah. With them, with my rugby, it was just too much on. Because I was driving like an hour to go to work and drive another hour to go back, because sometimes I'll be working a completely different suburb. So, I was just noticing it was just like draining me, like both mentally and physically, and I had to commit to one, and my pay wasn't as good if I worked only 7 hours compared to 10 to 12 hours. So I had to weigh it up, and I had to give that part-time job of rugby a break, and then pursue construction. And then 10 months in, I go to my agent. I want to give it one more crack. If nothing comes, and then I'll officially retire. And then he goes, well, we're in some luck, mate. Salford throwing in a chance for you to go over.
Did you know who Salford were, be honest, at that stage?
I actually knew Salford because when I came over here for the 2013 World Cup, Junior Sal, he was in the squad with us, and he signed with Salford Red Devils. And I remember playing a trial when I think it was 2013. Were you guys at AJ Bell or at the Willows?
13 Willows, wasn't it?
No, 2013 would have been AJ Bell.
Yeah, because I remember we had a trial for Samoa against the Knights there, and I remember the crowd was only small, but the singing was awesome. Mm-hmm. So Junior was there, and that's the only way I knew Salford. And then they said Super League. I never considered coming over here because the kids were settling in their school in Australia.
But did they all come with you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's you realise how much your family love you. I know the kids don't have
much
choice, but your missus, with everything you've been through, to go, I want to give it one last crack.
Yeah.
In Salford, on the other side of the world, let's leave Sydney.
But
now.
His parents did it to him, so he thought,
exactly. Mate, it took a lot of convincing for my wife, because her mum, her sisters, her brother were there, her nieces and nephews, and she was real close with my family. So to take them away from that, there was a lot of going back and forth with the wife, with trying to get her over the line to come over and
that's a
pursue
lot of trust
my dream
from both sides, isn't it? Because you've got to make it work, because you're dragging your family across the other side of the world, and she's got to believe in you as well.
Yeah, it is. It's once I knew if I could get them over and convince her to come over, I'll reward them, because that's another thing about working 10 to 12 hours. Like everyday Joe was, I wasn't seeing my kids. The simple things as like their birthdays, school drop off, school pick up. You realise how good we had it. Before I went to work construction, like the amount of downtime you would know you get with your families, those kind of stuff, mate, you can't buy. You know what I mean? And that was another thing that convinced my wife to come over, was the amount of downtime I get with them. It's just those simple things that I get back now is pretty awesome.
How have Salford helped you rediscover your love for the game?
Oh, a lot, mate. It's like I said to you earlier, I lost the love for my NRL career the last 2 to 3 years back home, and that's kind of what made me want to just work now, and I lost that passion for it, and coming over here definitely gave me that love for it, and I found my passion for the game. It's played a huge role.
What were those impressions of Super League? Because we touched on it earlier. Every former NRL player we get, Mark, says and Paul Vaughan said it, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago? You just can't believe how a small amount of people can make that much noise, and the songs that they've got, the chants, the humour in the chanting, the atmosphere, well. the ambience, everything. It's just, does it compare to the NRL in that sense?
Yeah, I think they're right up there with the NRL. I think what's better here is the singing and the chants. When I hear that the crowd singing when I go out there for warm up and to play the games, it just gives you that extra boost, and that's when I'm happy just to give my time for anyone who wants to chat, who's a Salford fan. Like at the end of the day, those are the people that are paying for your wages. Those are the people that are turning up for you. So mate, it's awesome here. I love it.
I'm interested to know what your first thoughts were when you turned up for pre-season. So it's Salford, it's probably 0, couple of degrees, it's the middle of November, the rain's coming in sideways, the field that you train on is pretty shitty, it's like really boggy, and you've left Australia to come and train in that. What were your first thoughts for those first few sessions?
Right. So I because they took our visas a while, the old visa card.
You're one of them guys that turned up late.
Wait, I turned up
the first game with your kit on.
Yeah, the end of Jan, like Jan 25th. I rocked up, and then and the boys were like, they were into me. Like, I didn't even know them. They were already into me. Like, oh, the old visa, hey, the old visa's not ready. And then I was like, anyway, I rocked up, and it was, mate, I was to training in a beanie, a jacket, tracksuit pants, and I'm running out there, and the boys are just laughing at me. They're wearing shorts, just long sleeves, and I'm looking at Ken, because I've been talking to Ken CEO in the lead up to coming over here. I've been asking Ken, Krishnan, Junior Sal, what's it like? Because obviously going back to the convincing part to really sell it to my wife, sell this dream.
Should have said it's right near the Trafford Centre.
Yeah, and I looked at Ken and like, where's the sun, mate? Where's the sun that you promised me? It was
Costa del Salford. We get sun in a little box. You put 2 coins in the thing, and
I ran on the pitch, and the next day my groins, my calves were sore. And Rosie tells me, oh, I'm going to need you to play in this trial this week, because the following week is when the season starts. So I played in that trial against Warrington, and I felt like a bit hit by a bus. I was sore, man. And
did you play first game of the season?
Yeah, against Cass. It was, yeah.
So you've been in the country. So all the boys had done a full long pre-season for 3 months.
Yeah.
You turn up 2 weeks before the first game.
Yeah.
And straight in.
Straight in, played half a game in the Warrington trial. And then that following week, the season kicked off against Cass.
I'm surprised the boys like you.
Whose place did you take? Who was supposed to start that week?
I was still learning the boys' names, and
hey, mate,
some of the boys
are
forward.
Wasn't it? Mate was.
Mate. Hey, bro. Yeah, early ball, bro.
Yes, brother, I'm here.
Yeah, so I didn't know any of the plays. Rosie was like, mate, just do your job, and
just give him the ball.
Yeah, you'll get better as each games go. And I remember specifically, I think it was round 3 against Toulouse. It was at AJ Bell, And mate, we had a hurricane, hailstorm, mate, tornado hit in the warm up. The hail was going like on an angle, and I was just standing behind a post like this, just hitting my legs. I'm looking at Ken, and all the boys are running around like it's normal, and I'm looking at Ken. I'm like, this is not normal. Get me off this field. I'm going into hypothermia over here. I couldn't believe it. Like 10 seasons in one game. I was just, it was a good memory of that.
But it clicked so quickly for you, didn't it? It just seemed from the outside the perfect fit. You were in the dream team last year, probably again, let's face it. And your relationship with Joe Burgess, describe that one. It just seems like telepathic.
Yeah, well, because Sarge, he was a left centre, because he's a left centre specialist. He was a left centre at that time. And then, so Rosie said, oh, look, we're going to put Sarge there, and when Cal comes back, he'll play right centre. And I go, yeah, mate, I'm just happy. I'm happy to play anywhere at this point. You know, I'm happy to be here running around. You know, oh, sweet. So, anyways, I think after the first 2 games I was playing in the right centre, I think Sarge got suspended. And then I go to him, oh, do you reckon, because he was going to put Dion on the left centre. Yeah. And I'll go, oh, do you reckon I can have a crack at left centre? That's where I prefer in a way. And then when Sarge comes back, you can put him back there. And he goes, oh yeah, sweet then. And then played in the left centre, and I just loved it then. From there, me and Joe just kind of clicked. It helps that he's fast too, because I got no speed on me.
You still have, I think. Have you always been the king of the offload? Or is that just something we've picked up on now in Super League? Were you doing that at the Bulldogs?
At Dragons, I think it was year 2017 or 18. I finished second in offloads behind Marty Tapau at the end of the season. So I knew I always had it in me. But
what do they call it? It's got a nickname over here, isn't it? Something pass? I can't remember.
Flick pass.
Flick pass. Yeah, but like that's become your thing, right? And you're up there in those charts in Super League as well.
Yeah, it's kind of again, you would have played with Benji Marshall.
Oh, a big friend of mine,
Benji. Bags.
He is
he is a friend.
Yeah, so his skill level was like crazy.
I taught him a few things actually.
Yeah. So as a kid in high school, I used to watch him, and he had the flick going in that, and Mark Gasnier. These were players that I kind of looked up to. I wanted to be like, and that's where I kind of got it.
And Paul Rowley, you mentioned his name there, but how crucial has he been in this renaissance for you?
Oh mate, he's been crucial. I'll probably name him as one of the best coaches that's I've been under, and that's purely because he allows me just to be myself and not feel like a robot. Because it can get like that. You will know, Mark. A bit structural too much back at NRLA, where you just kind of had to stay in your lane and not travel outside it and be a robot. And that's how I felt back towards my end of my NRL career. And coming over here, Rosie's just allowed me to travel where I want to travel. And it's like
expressing yourself. Is that what it is?
Expressing myself, and just rather than trying to work on your weaknesses, keep building your strengths.
I think Salford is the perfect club for your style of play as well, because you like early ball. And for the last 2 seasons, Salford have been the most expansive team, the best team to watch in terms of going east to west, playing coast to coast, and just playing early ball from their own half, playing that expansive style. And when you've got Brearley, Sneed, Brodie Croft who want to give their outside backs early ball, it's perfect for this guy. And when I first saw him play for Salford, he reminded me a lot of Shantae Happy, who was at Bradford, and him and Vanacola had a great understanding. But I think when you've got a big man who plays on the fringes, who's got that bit of footwork, who's got that flick pass in them, it's so hard for defences to read what they're going to do, because they can hit you in so many different ways. And I'd never be a winger, but if I was Joe Burgess, I'd be licking my lips every time I play outside this guy, because he's going to score a heap of tries. And it's been great to watch him for the last couple of seasons.
Not just licking lips, licking Tim maybe as well.
Yeah, licking Tim, Tim's lips.
Whatever it takes, licking Tim's lips and whatever Tim wants licked to keep those tries coming. We've got to finish really with talking about the greatest thing we're going to talk about over the last hour and a half is the World Cup, because you'd at this stage already played in the World Cup in 2013 and 2017, right? So hugely experienced on the international stage, but you're at home and you're watching Samoa get battered by England, and you're probably still thinking, I want a piece of that. I'd love a slice of one last dance in a Samoa shirt. You then get called up. Did you? There were so many injuries, weren't there, from that first game? Were you expecting to be in the picture? Were you just thinking, I'm going to watch that whole World Cup at home with the popcorn?
Yeah, it's funny that because, coming over here, making my decision to come over here, I was just playing a few games now and a few games in, and I was asking, where's the World Cup? Just, so I can watch. And the boys like, it's over here. And I went home and I chuckled, I had a laugh to my missus. It'll be funny, if I was to play in this World Cup, because it's over here. We just laughed about it. This was early in the year. Anyways, fast forward and then to that game, I was excited to watch that game because I was like, oh man, they got a great team here, Samoa. The boys are going to go well here. They've hyped them up real well for this game. It's the opening game. We've got a few of the GF players in there, NRL. So I was excited watching at home. I had my beer in my hand. And then before you know it, the boys are getting towed up and I'm going into a rage and my kids are looking at me and my wife's like, babe, they probably think you're having a mental breakdown. and I'm like, oh no, Daddy's all right. This is just Daddy being passionate about his country. And yeah, they got absolutely towed up by the English boys. And
at St James's Park, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was in Newcastle, yeah. And then just watching that, I was just like, getting frustrated, and I was like, oh man. And then seeing the injuries to the outside backs.
And you're like, yes. This is my chance.
And then I went to sleep because I was a bit drunk and upset. And I went to sleep anyway, slept it off. And then and I thought I went to sleep. I thought I had a dream that the coach messaged me. And I woke up the next morning and I go, oh, babe, I had this message. I had this dream that someone messaged me that I was going into camp. And then I went and grabbed my phone and I looked and it was a missed call from Matt Parrish and a message, hey mate, are you around? Are you around town, mate? We could use you to come into the camp. We've had a few injuries.
Oh, so you manifested this in a dream?
Yeah. So I must have seen it, but I was too drunk and from watching the game.
The better story is you dreamt it true. That's incredible.
So you manifest. Yeah. Getting to manifest, it helps
Jedi
a lot.
Mind trick on Matt Parrish.
Incredible. So literally the next day you were off and picking up your kit and
so he rang Kenny. So guess what? And he said, guess what?
Because it was a winger and a centre, and he's called me and I'll go because I was too hungover to drive. And I was like, oh, do you reckon I could use this last day to spend with my family? And then I'll come in on Monday. And he's like, yeah, that's fine, mate. That's fine. And then I was like, Kenny's around too. I've seen that we've lost the winger. Kenny's around too in the area. He's not going anywhere. He's like, oh yeah, can you shoot me his number? So anyway, I didn't know if Kenny got selected or not. And then I get a message from Kenny. He was like, Oos, are you in the squad? I was like, yeah, Oos, yeah, are you? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, choo, let's go. And then anyway, we're driving. Like he come and pick me up, and we're driving to Doncaster, and we're just laughing to each other. We're like, how good's this? Like, man, two old veterans, two veterans, the old boys going into camp, and like, we just, because it was like a long drive there too, we just couldn't believe our luck.
Like a seed from Bad Boys driving towards.
Yeah.
So you then arrive in camp. You're straight into the team. You're bringing all that experience that you've had over 2 World Cups as well. How did that bunch of players, and I know a lot of them had just been put together and they'd hardly had any training sessions ahead of that England Morley, but how does a team that's on its arse then get to the final and turn things around in the way that they did?
Yeah, mate, I was asking myself that question too. Like, how is this the same team, that got absolutely pumped from England? And yeah, it's surreal. Like,
it's down to you, is what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, like, I mean to pump myself up, but it's crazy, man. Because even when in camp, if you look at the amount of talent that's in there, and you think, like, how's this the same team in round one?
I heard a rumour that when they first arrived, they were enjoying themselves maybe a bit too much.
Well, that's what.
And then they played awful. England played amazing. And then as the tournament went on, England probably standards dropped a little bit, and then Samoa got better and better each week. They probably stayed away from the KFC and the nightlife of Manchester for a few weeks. A couple of old veterans come into the squad, bring a bit of stardust. Next minute they're in the final.
You just need a few weeks in Doncaster, don't you? That's what.
Right in the middle of nowhere. Oh, good old Donny. Right,
and you had, to be fair, you did have The Rock cheering you on, which is incredible.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Like you start seeing these little celebrities, or not little, but like those.
I mean, he's
celebrities.
Probably the biggest celebrity in the world.
Yeah, and then Tua, who's the Dolphins quarterback in the NFL.
He was behind you as well.
Yeah. So like you have all these people getting amongst there, and then you're looking at the parades that's going on back home.
That's cool to see a video of The Rock there with his Samoa shirt on.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Like when they were saying it, we were like, nah, no way. And then they showed us the footage.
You slide into his DMs afterwards and go, oh, cheers, Oos.
Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah, I definitely did. Even the other guys. They left us on scene. They left me on scene, but that's all right.
Trying to get some new Under Armour trainers.
Yeah. something wrong.
But also during this run then to the final, you become Samoa's most capped player.
Yeah, I did not know that until they said, oh, you're like 2 games away from being the most capped. And for me, I was just happy to be there and just take it game by game. At first, I thought me and Ken we were just going in to make the numbers at training. Little I know, coach that week he goes, I need you to play. Isaac isn't well; his shoulders, gone for the tournament. So now to get that around my head, I had to prepare like I'm playing each week, and it was pretty cool.
That's a hell of an honour, though, isn't it? And again, when we think about this chat that we've just had, going full circle back to the shack, if I can call it that, with the banana leaves up your ass.
Yeah.
To suddenly, representing that country more than anyone in that sport, and given what you'd been through as well, to be pulling on that shirt and heading towards a World Cup final, it's quite unbelievable, really. It's an unbelievable story. Probably you don't even appreciate how incredible it is.
Nah, it's I have nights where I'm just like laying there and I think of that moment of being that kid born in a small island and humble beginnings. To going into being the most capped and to where I am now, it's sometimes I got to pinch myself because I think to put on that blue jersey and to make history with that squad, it's one of the best achievements in my rugby career.
Fucking golden point extra time, Mark.
I was at the game as well.
Well, yeah, the Emirates.
Yeah, I went down
to see your mates. George was playing.
It was
ruined our day, didn't he? Tim Lafai, 2 tries. Pathetic.
Yeah, good tries as well.
Yeah, wasn't it? What was that day like?
No, it was, that's probably the best in my career. Like the atmosphere itself, like the sit lug again. Like, you have a few thousands at AJ Bell singing. Imagine Emirates, like, you're the underdogs.
You'd have watched Arsenal games there on the telly and things over the years.
Yeah, and that stadium, man, it's so cool. Even the change rooms, like the lights underneath, it's and we were in the away change rooms. I don't know what the home ones are like. It was just unbelievable. Like, it was a dream come true, and to be the underdogs and to do that, it was something special from the boys.
Was that the moment that you thought Tim Lafai is back? With everything that you've been through, to suddenly be playing in a World Cup semi-final, taking your team with 2 tries into a World Cup final, and then obviously this fantastic Super League career that you've got going as well, and still time on the clock, right, at 30 at that stage?
Yeah, it was the cherry on top to what I see as probably one of my best years in my career. To finish off like that with Salford and then go into the World Cup squad and finish off the way we did, it's definitely the icing on the cake for me. It's definitely up there.
Obviously didn't win the final, but incredible achievement to get there and to have that experience of playing in the World Cup final. What do you think that's done for rugby in Samoa?
Oh, I think it's open not just for Samoa, but for those other teams like Fiji, Tonga. I think it's opened up gates for those players that are back home and over here, because it just evens up the international game and it will make it so much more competitive. Going forward, it's going to make those young ones want to play for their, the countries that they select.
What next then for Tim Lafai? You signed a new deal, didn't you, at Salford? New 3-year deal last year. So you got 2 more years.
Yeah, so 2 more years. Wait. 2 more years after this? Yeah, 2 more years after this.
I had to count that.
2 more years. 2 more years.
It's so certain.
I'm singing a song. 2 more years. 2 more years after this.
Again, it took a lot of convincing the wife. to
do you show her the concerts and then
I just went straight to the.
Okay. We'll do 2 more
But
years
you're not done.
this.
You're 31, right?
Yeah.
You still. I know you've had a lot on the clock in terms of emotions and so on. But you've got 3-4 years in the locker, yeah.
Yeah. Look,
moving into the back row
after these 2 years, I'm hoping. So I'll get the snip after this because
you got a fifth.
I'm hoping, and then she can find like a little hobby over here. Cause
I'll let you know how it is when I have mine done.
Yeah, we can do it together. And then
I've got nothing to snip.
Hopefully after these,
thumbnail.
hopefully after these 2 years, I would love to, seeing how I'm going. Probably play another year or two. Like I said, I'm loving it over here, the atmosphere, the people, and the game itself.
You can see that mark on his face, can't you? That is just the most incredible turnaround story, really. Yeah. I think it's quite inspirational for a lot of people to listen to Tim's journey.
Yeah, I love the fact that even with no future in sight, really, for extending his career, working on a building site, he was still getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go and work out and just keep that possibility alive if the opportunity came. And there's a lot of people could heed that advice and take lessons from Tim's outlook on his career, because you never know when it might or might not end, and if you keep believing and keep persevering with something, amazing things can happen. And playing in a World Cup final for your country and playing so well over here is just exactly what it deserves.
And that transcends Tim, doesn't it? You don't have to be listening to this and be a sportsman or a sports person, a sportswoman. You could be in any walk of life. Don't give up, because it sounds cheesy and it sounds an Americanism, doesn't it? But you are the walking proof of that.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds cliche, but don't give up on your dreams. You have your doubts and people doubting you, and outside noise, but you control what you can control. And if you have something you truly believe in and you want in life, you're holding yourself back. Don't let anyone else hold you back, and go on and pursue it, because you're never too old or too young to follow that dream.
Love it, mate. Look at that. What a message to finish with.
I'm going to walk out of here 10 foot tall after sitting next to this guy.
I'm going to go and join the NRL.
I think I could play again.
Come back, mate.
I want to get in the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning, do some calf raises.
That's what the 10k run was about.
That was it.
Come back.
Tell
for a reason. You didn't know what the reason was.
Tell Rolls I'm coming back.
And I let you beat me because then you're thinking like, I'm quick.
Boost.
I'm quick.
Yeah,
now.
it's all falling into place. Gets me out of the house, so I don't have to look after all the kids.
Three-piece, the final piece.
I'm coming back.
Love it. Tim, in all seriousness, mate, thank you so much for coming in, because you don't have to sit here with two complete strangers in a musty room. Would you describe it? It's quite warm in here, isn't it? Quite sticky on a sort of early summer evening at Lancashire Cricket Club. You're probably thinking, what am I doing? But to be so honest and so open, and again, this sounds sort of cheesy, but I think there will be people listening think that you could have helped, and that's all we can do, right? Two idiots sat here and you weren't the idiot, me and Mark are the idiots.
Yeah, I'm the idiot.
So I really appreciate it, mate. Thank you so much.
Nah, no worries. Thanks for having me, guys. Like, again, if I can help anyone who's watching in any way, where it's 100.
Can anyone slide into your DMs? Is that what you're saying?
Mate, that's what I'm saying. Mate, if you mental health, rugby, you let me know. I've been there, seen it all.
Well, in all seriousness, Dan Sargentson, who I played with, you played with, he's actively seeking to help people with any struggles they're going through at the minute. I think he's quite open with having chats.
I was actually talking with Sarge like last week, and we were talking on this topic about mental health, and he's looking to do some great work in there. And I told him, if you need me for anything, I'm happy to help.
Yeah. Good man.
And we've had Dan on the podcast as well. I think even just the conversations that we've had with yourself, with Dan, and with Callum Watkins can be a game changer for people, and that's really important. So powerful stuff. Thank you, mate. Thank you so much. There we go. You can listen again. You can watch again. YouTube. Wasn't it?
Such a good episode,
wasn't it, Mark?
Loved it.
You said a few words. Well, you're really picking up on those
keep
words.
Keep it humble,
Go and have a listen back. Go and have a click back and listen to what we've done this season. The season's gone by. Give us a review as well, which is always nice. Give us a follow on to Twitter, social media @OutOfYourRL. Go and listen to Adrian Morley. Go and listen to, who else do we have, Mark, this season?
Paul Wellens.
Carl Fitzpatrick. Paul Wellens was fantastic. He was the first guest we had this season. So if you haven't listened to that, go and have a little listen. Get our likes and follows up, because that's what keeps us in the business. And we will see you in a couple of weeks with a couple of new guests. Mark, are you excited?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so am I. See you later.